every single player that walks through our doors, whether it's remote, whether it's in-house, like we want to have the tools to be able to help that player. I knew we could replicate some of the things that I learned in other athletes and help other athletes get a very similar result. You know, we had to do what we had to do to make it happen.
So for belt squats, there's a couple pieces of equipment that you're going to want to buy.
And as long as I had that belief that, like, no, I know I'm capable of doing this, like, I was not going to take no for an answer.
You're getting a full 90 degrees of hip and knee flexion.
You have a job to do. You set out with a goal, and you're not going to stop until you turn over every possible stone to get there. What's going on, guys? Ben Brewster here, and today's gonna be a little bit different of a video where, believe it or not, it's been 10 years since Tread was originally founded, since about a week ago. And so I thought it makes sense to just kind of commemorate that and share a little bit about where we've come from, about our mission, about where we're going, and, you know, some kind of fun stories from along the way. So, you know, you probably haven't been following Tread for that entire period of time. Maybe you just found out about us over the past year. Maybe you found out about us 4 years ago, but it really has been a long time in the making to get to this point. And, you know, it really started with my story, with my partner Coan's story, and us just trying to figure out how to get better ourselves in our own careers. And so it started long before Tread was actually founded. As a 70 to 73 mile an hour high school freshman, 150 pounds, just trying to figure out, like everybody, how do I play at the college level? Could I be a big leaguer one day? Right, that was that dream, that was that goal. And it really started with that, and it started with just trying to figure out how to throw harder, how to stay healthy, how to develop my arsenal, how to you know, throw strikes consistently. It really just started with trying to figure it out myself. And, you know, Tread ultimately emerged out of that passion, out of that drive, and out of that hunt for how to better prepare myself, because I wasn't one of these kids coming in throwing 95 miles an hour in high school, rolling out of bed, throwing 85 at 14 years old. Like, that was not me. And so I had to figure out how to use my brain, kind of outsmart the process, how to train smarter. And so for me, having gone from low 70s to, you know, mid 80s by the time I graduated, to walking on in college, to not really playing for the first 3 years, to finally throwing, you know, in the low to mid 90s and getting drafted as a senior, to ultimately throwing upper 90s, and a whole string of injuries after that fact, and trying to get healthy. And everything I've learned along the way, I knew at some point there, I knew we could replicate some of the things that I learned in other athletes and help other athletes get a very similar result. And so at that point in time, specifically when Tread was founded about 10 years ago, I had just been drafted a year prior, and I really hadn't seen anywhere put together all the puzzle pieces. And so I had to kind of go and figure out, okay, how do I learn how to gain weight? Right? I'm trying to figure that out from totally different sources, the natural bodybuilding community and dietitians and nutritionists, and how do I figure out how to, you know, learn a curveball, learn a breaking ball, improve my biomechanics. I had to learn about the physics of baseball. I had to learn about the mental preparation, and movement assessments, and strength and power, performance testing, and, you know, learning from all these different sources, and realizing, like, there really wasn't any one thing out there that kind of put all the puzzle pieces together. And I felt like I had to do that all on my own, in my own career. That's really kind of where the genesis of Tread started, is like, can we put all these puzzle pieces together in one program, in one package for guys? And so that's where it started, recognizing that most places kind of had their one thing they were really good at, but there were gaps. And so certain players would get a lot of benefit if that happened to be their issue, their limiting factor. Other players, like if somebody was a skinny, like kind of weight gain guy, that was a limiting factor. Like they wouldn't get the same results. And so kind of my goal was, like, every single player that walks through our doors, whether it's remote, whether it's in-house, like, we want to have the tools to be able to help that player and specifically diagnose what's going on, and then give them the nuanced, all-encompassing approach and plan to help them, regardless of age, level, what type of mover they are, weight gain, weight loss, mental preparation, confidence issue, mobility, or having that diverse array of tools to be able to address whatever issues players presented with. And so if we go back to 2015 and kind of look at the state of the industry, or the state of, like, baseball at that point in time, certainly it had progressed a lot over the previous 10 years when I was just focusing on my own training. You know, distance running was, people had kind of figured out that distance running maybe wasn't the best thing for pitchers, and weightlifting was a good idea, and, oh, maybe weighted balls can help, and long toss can help. And So there had been quite a bit of advancement at that point in time. The pitching technology, pitch tracking tech wasn't around yet. Remote training wasn't a thing. And so we were the first company that went all in on primarily remote, like as our only thing to start. And now it's very commonplace. But I specifically remember at the start, that first kind of off season when we had launched and we're trying to get our name out there and trying to help athletes get better. And high school kids would find our stuff online, find us on Twitter, find us on YouTube, and we get on a call with them and their parents. And like more than once, a parent would ask us like, "Hey, is this like a scam? Like, is this legit?" And because the idea of remote training, the idea of like, how are you going to get players better online was like such a foreign thing. And even close friends and family in some cases, like there was skepticism about, could this actually work? Could we pull it off? Could we help players get better remotely? And from our vantage point, it was never really a doubt that we could with the right type of player. Because what we've seen that is it really comes down to players that want it bad enough that compliance isn't going to be an issue, communication isn't going to be an issue, consistency isn't going to be an issue, right? They just need a plan to follow and someone to talk to help problem solve it. That's what I needed. I didn't need someone there watching me every rep in the weight room, every throw in my throwing program. That's not what I needed. I was accountable. I was able to get my program done. Like that wasn't the problem in my career. I was just focusing on the wrong things. I didn't know what I had to do. I didn't know how it all fit together. And so recognizing like, we knew that could be a really good fit and that we could help players get better if they kind of held up their end of the bargain, and knowing like that might be a small percentage of the population out there. So that was a big question mark, is how many players out there are really going to be receptive to this remote training idea and be accountable and consistent and be able to actually make it work. And they really just need the knowledge and a plan and kind of somebody to guide them through it. That's really the big question mark at that point. But it's kind of funny looking back is like, we haven't gotten that type of response in, 8+ years now, but yeah, quite a few parents like were very skeptical and thought this might be a scam when we first came out. And so we've, kind of effectively at that point created our own niche. And for us, our North Star was always athlete first. It was, we're doing this to help athletes. We're doing this to, like, we see ourselves and our own careers and struggles in the athletes that we're coaching. And so, continuing to maintain that as our North Star, it's like everything that we're doing and developing and hires and developments in the systems that we're building, like everything is based around, is this going to actually help athletes get better? I think it's important, we'll get into this a little bit later on, but what we're doing is not just putting out information for the athletes that go on to work with us. We feel strongly about like open sourcing this information, putting out tips and tidbits and putting a ton of resources into this channel and the information and the content team that we have, knowing that's going to help athletes that never go on to even work with us, but still knowing that that's going to lead to that goodwill, lead to that leveling up in the knowledge base around the entire industry. And so for me, it's super gratifying when coaches who I've never met will DM me or be in a random city in the U.S. and training somewhere or just out wearing a Tread shirt, and somebody will come up to me and recognize the shirt and thank me and thank our team for what we put out. And so I think that's a piece of it. That North Star has always been athlete first because we lived it and I went through the struggles. I didn't have a mentor for almost all of it. I know I could have made so much more progress and totally changed the trajectory of my own career had I had someone to guide me through it from the start, and just been putting that effort in the right places, not trying to figure it out on my own for all of high school and just having nonstop injuries because I didn't know what I was doing, and very avoidable training mistakes, avoidable mechanical mistakes, just avoidable workload mismanagement issues all throughout. And so I want to give a little Easter egg here. If some of the OGs who have really been around Tread for a long time like are familiar with this, but think about it. Like, do you actually know what Tread means, stands for, came from? You probably don't, but here's where it came from. So for me, I came up with Tread a couple years before Tread was actually founded. I just had like a blog that I would kind of run, and so it needed a name. And so for me, I was thinking about what could kind of encapsulate the training process and the philosophy and how far I'd come and what went into that and what it would take for athletes in general, like who are truly on that same page of trying to chase their absolute athletic potential, like what goes into that process and how can we encapsulate it in like a simple way. And so the T is for train. T and Tread is for train. And for me, it's about training smarter. It's not just about training harder. I've learned this lesson myself many times the hard way. It's about all the details that go into that training process. again, it's not just about how hard you can work. It's about all the little nitty-gritty, detail-oriented things in the throwing program to create that proper stimulus, in the weight room to create that stimulus, in the mobility, corrective side to get the adaptations in your body. And so train. Obviously, we need to work hard, but we need to work smart. We need to be detail-oriented. The R is for recover. And I put this in here because I think it's important that athletes overlook this all the time, is recognizing that there is a stimulus, there's an initial kind of training effect, but that actually breaks down your body. Like the adaptation happens in the recovery process. That's the supercompensation effect. Like there's that initial dip in recovery after you train hard, you break down the body, then there's a recovery. And so it's knowing how to balance the workload. It's knowing how to manage and periodize in the weight room to actually allow for those adaptations to occur. And so I think that's important enough. It gets overlooked so much. I thought it was important enough to actually include in the literal name of the company. The E is for endure. And so you go through these training cycles, training cycles, recovery, and inevitably, as anybody who's been through more than like a 8-week velo program or lifted for a couple months knows, like progress is not linear. And you're going to have plateaus along the way, whether it's an actual injury or some major setback, or just things stall out and you need to make an adjustment. Right, the same approach that you start with, like you can take a linear progression model in the weight room, maybe for an entire year as a brand new lifter, 15-year-old kid. You can get pretty strong doing the same things for about a year straight, and eventually the program has to adjust and evolve. And that's really the entirety of the approach. Is you're going to hit plateaus, you're going to hit setbacks, and now there's just kind of long-term, in that long-term process, there's this mental side, which you have the grit to push through those plateaus, to be able to adjust and pivot the plan, to be able to endure the setbacks that are going to happen. And it's not saying like everyone has to get hurt every single year or anything like that. It's just like, yeah, injuries are going to happen, like little things are going to happen, plateaus are going to happen, and it would be dishonest to claim anything otherwise. And so anyone who's actually chased peak athletic potential for years on end knows this. You talk to any Olympian, like, yeah, it's a given. And so there's that kind of meta level. Can you endure the years of training and the setbacks that are going to happen? Like you're going to have the train, recover, big setback or big plateau. Have to figure out how to push through that. The A is for achieve, and you are going to have those wins along the way. You're going to go through the training process, and eventually that light bulb's going to click. You're going to have that checkpoint. You're going to make the high school varsity team. You're going to get that college offer. You're going to earn the Friday start job, or earn the closer role, or have your first college win, or get drafted or sign as a free agent. Like there's going to be those checkpoints along the way, and I think it's important to celebrate those when they happen, but recognize like those are just the incremental wins along that journey and along that progression. And that's kind of where achieve comes from. For me, it's just achieving those little milestones along the way. It's not really that's not the bigger goal necessarily, but it's recognizing you're going to have those little wins along the way, as well as those plateaus that happen that you kind of have to endure and push through. And then the D for me is dominate. And this is the end goal. The end goal isn't just to make it onto a college team or get drafted, right? Like it's great to make it to the next level, but for me that's not the goal. The goal is to dominate at the next level. For me, it's about the culmination of years of preparation that go into that end goal. And I think it properly frames what we're trying to do at Tread, which is not just help a guy throw hard one time at a tryout or a showcase to get an offer at the next level, but how do we actually prepare this guy that he can consistently dominate at that level in game where it counts? Staying healthy, command, the pitchability side, the mental game and the resilience, and it's way more than just improving stuff. And I think when you frame it as dominate, like that is the end goal. It's on-field performance and just absolutely embarrassing hitters at that level. It's not just getting to that level. So for me, that's kind of the culmination moment of this entire process. And so that's what Tread stands for. And now you might think that that Tread in general has been like an overnight success. And obviously, a cliche to kind of say, but it really has not been an overnight success. It's been 10 years in the making. The first 4 years, no employees, right? It's no full-time employees, no physical location. It's just continue to kind of focus on our own playing careers at that point, building Tread and kind of in the shadows in the background. There was a lot that went into it in those early years that nobody saw, and that's fine. That's just like the entrepreneurial journey, and that's what it kind of takes to build anything. And kind of mirroring that to your own career, like nobody might know your name right now, and that's okay. And you're going to seem like an overnight success when 2 years from now you bust through and you're the kid throwing 93 in high school, or you're the walk-on, or you suddenly have the starting role in your college team, like that's okay. But just recognizing there's a lot is going to go on behind the scenes that no one's going to recognize, and that's just how it is. 2014, a year before we launched Tread, like I'm in my first year of pro ball, and there's a decent amount of downtime when you're not when you're either at the field, just like hanging around the clubhouse, you have time, or when you're just home and now you have 3 hours with nothing to do. I spent every waking hour that I wasn't at the field writing a draft of that first ebook that we launched, Building the 95 Mile an Hour Body, which I wrote, at 23 years old. That's what I was doing. Other guys were going out, to the casinos, right? I was home writing a draft of this ebook, but it's really not about that. It was just really about helping athletes. It's like, what can I put this information down on paper so that when we actually launch this thing in a year, we have something to kind of like to point to, that like this is kind of what we stand for, this is what we've learned, and directly having something that we can use to help athletes from day one, and kind of encapsulate some of the learnings I had to that point and what it really helped me, and trying to at least like begin to put the puzzle pieces together that I had to figure out in my own career. 2015, I mean, just a couple stories along the way, but 2015 was really the starting point of it, and just trying to figure out, like, I'd had a number of parents and athletes reach out to me at that point who'd followed my story a little bit through some of the stuff I put out online, and reached out for help, and hey, can you write my son a program? And so we knew there was definitely a desire for it. We didn't know how big of a desire there actually was. Like, how common was this that somebody would really wanted this type of help remotely? And so, yeah, we went into it a little bit blind. We didn't exactly know what the response was going to be. But that first year, I mean, we just found a random CrossFit gym that we had a connection to. We needed somewhere to train, for ourselves, somewhere to film videos. We found the owner allowed us to just like rent a little room in the back of this CrossFit gym, no AC, no showers. We'd be woken up because there was a CrossFit class at 5 a.m. and they were doing wall slams with the medicine balls, and that was the wall that we were trying to sleep against. And so, like, it just super fun looking back, but like super gritty. Just whatever we needed to do to like make it happen, we had to do what we had to do to make it happen. All the content, all the coaching of every new athlete, every call, like it was just the two of us, and we had to figure out how to just make it happen from nothing. So yeah, I say this just because it's kind of cool to look back and reflect 10 years in, but also just like there's a lot that happens behind the scenes that like no one's ever going to see, and that's okay. That's just part of it. I think a lot of athletes can relate. Obviously, any business owners can also relate if they're watching this. But our mission at this point was still ourselves, like trying to make it in our own careers, and then at the same time, how do we replicate the results that we had gotten to that point in other athletes? And so that kept us going. For me, I see a lot of myself in our players. And so that's, for me, like Tread is not just like a company. It's like, no, Tread is my story. Tread is the story of our coaches who all have their own kind of journey and path. And, that's the commonality that like ties everyone here together, is that vision of like helping athletes reach their athletic potential, identifying the ones who actually care and give a shit. Hopefully our messaging like attracts them and turns the people away that really don't care. Like, they're not going to put in that extra effort to get that last 1-5% outcome, and that's okay. We're not necessarily trying to speak to the masses. We're trying to speak to that 1% that is like, no, I want to do everything I possibly can. You don't understand. And so for me, like, I get a lot of satisfaction when we help athletes get to those checkpoints, achieve those goals, because again, like, my story is very similar. Like, I was a 15-year-old kid without much guidance, who needed a mentor, who didn't really know what to do, who was like grasping at straws in my training. I was an 18-year-old, walk-on who didn't really have any direction, like kind of ignored a little bit because I was the worst player on the team, I understand. But I still didn't have direction. I was kind of grasping at straws, didn't really know what I needed to do mechanically, pitch design-wise, like mental game. I was just a total train wreck. And then I was a 22-year-old new draft pick, kind of getting thrown around in the bureaucracy of pro baseball. Same thing, just didn't quite have clarity. Everyone wishes they could go back knowing what they know now. And that's kind of the purpose here, is like, we know what we know now. Let's help athletes not make a lot of these same mistakes. And so you fast forward a little bit to 2017, again, still focusing on my own career, 3, 4, 5 hours a day, doing what I can, still believing I can be a big leaguer. I get released in 2016. In 2017, I have elbow surgery, rehab back from that. And in August of 2017, first bullpen back, 96, second bullpen back, 97, fourth or fifth bullpen back, 98. And the hardest I've ever thrown. I'm like, great, we're finally putting everything together after all this time. And then back problems, knee problems, hip problems, start chasing injuries. All of this, eventually find out is stemming from, hip impingement issue. And, spend the next 5-6 years really chasing, trying to get the hip healthy to be able to create the same velocity and just throw without pain, like I did for, in 2017. And so a lot of people don't know this, but like I was still keeping that as my primary goal. I was still training seriously until about 2 years ago. Not that I'm not training now, but like I was still very much in it, trying to make a comeback this entire time until about 2 years ago. 5 surgeries total, 2 elbow, 3 hip surgeries. And one agent asked me in about 2022, he's like, man, you're really helping my guys like this from a coaching standpoint. Like you should just focus on this. Why are you even thinking about like going back and trying to still play? And I think, most players watching this video understand. It's like, no, you have a job to do. You set out with a goal, and you're not going to stop until you turn over every possible stone to get there. And for me, that's what it was. Like I made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to stop pursuing baseball until I genuinely felt like, okay, my body's just like throwing in the towel. It would not be able to support the output that I would need to actually play at that level, or just like I'm flat out not good enough. And as long as I had that belief that like, no, I know I'm capable of doing this, like I was not going to take no for an answer. And so that's really my answer. At this point, I know I did everything I possibly could, and I'm at peace with that. I obviously wish I could go back and make different training decisions, but like I did the best I could with the information I had, and I don't have any regrets about how hard I worked or that I didn't exhaust everything possible. So going back hypothetically, like obviously everybody could change specific things, and you can't do that. And so for me, it's about no stone unturned. And I think for our players, like a lot of them know, like, hey, it's a long shot to be a big leaguer. Like not everybody even is setting that as their goal. But it's about like, hey, let's set an ambitious goal. Let's get as close as we can. Let's know that we left no stone unturned. And so for me, I still feel that like kind of a very intense curiosity and passion about like pitching development and continuing to throw, train at a high level, learn as much as I can firsthand about this stuff, which makes me a better coach, makes our content better. And again, I'm using myself as an example because it's what I know best, but it's really the same thing amongst all of our other coaches who continue to train and throw and tinker, and like that allows them to better help the athletes that we actually connect with. I mentioned that we put out majority of our information for free. Obviously, there's plenty of stuff behind the scenes that our athletes get that is just for our athletes, right? But we put out so much information for free because, like, for me in high school, I wasn't in a position to afford training. Like, I was trying to piece it together myself. There wasn't even really anything good in my area for training, but like, even if there was, I was not in a position to afford it. I feel like it's important to kind of make that our cornerstone of our approach is, hey, let's at least like provide information to help the masses, help players who are kind of like searching. And for us, it's about building trust. It's about sharing value. It's about being transparent. And the frame for me is just like put out information that would have helped the 15-year-old me. And if a video accomplishes that, then we're good. Like thumbs up for me. And it's funny because looking back, like 2015 videos, like they were kind of cringeworthy. Like I'm not naturally extroverted. I don't like being on camera. Not naturally comfortable like talking in front of camera. So it's kind of funny just like looking back. Like we do this content to help players, not because there's some affinity for social media. I don't love social media. I'm not on social media like in my personal life, on personal accounts. Like this is to connect with players. That's why we're doing this type of stuff. And so another cool thing about Tread is that, we treat every player the same. And, I've been the 15-year-old, the 18-year-old, the 22-year-old at every different kind of stage in my career. Looking back, like would I have wanted to only be like taken seriously when I was already a pro, or would I want to be taken seriously at every step in that process and given the same attention to detail? And that's how we design and approach it at Tread. Like our coaches know, like the 15-year-old is just as important and gets the same level of attention as the 18-year-old kid, as the 22-year-old kid. Like they're still getting the same attention to detail. They're still getting the same level of service and coaching and assistance because, again, we've all been at each of those stages in our career. I feel very strongly that should be the case, that it's not just like, oh, all the attention gets placed on these guys who are already elite. It's giving the guys who aren't yet at that stage a chance to still be successful. If we kind of progress to 2018, 2019, we start to have our first full-time hire in 2019. It starts to kind of balloon from there because we finally have a first brick and mortar location. And so this is a big turning point for us because finally it's something that we could kind of point to you're taking calls all the time, right? Parents, high school, college, pro athletes, and they're like, well, where's your facility? When can I come? Can I come train? And it's like, it's very abstract for them to wrap their head around until you have like a physical location that kind of anchors it. And so for us, that was a big turning point where things began to accelerate. And here's a fun before photo of that location, just really kind of small, gritty, 4,000 square feet of training space, enough for 2 throwing lanes, 2 squat racks, a set of dumbbells, and a little kind of warm-up area with 1 massage table. Like very, very just like bare bones. But like at the time, it was a huge deal for us. We were very proud of it. We put everything we could into designing that and getting it up and running and everything that went to it. But no AC back there. Got super hot in the summers, and there were a lot of fun stories, a lot of athlete transformations that we can point to in that space. And so, yeah, it was gritty, but like looking back, great memories and just like where we were at as a company, like essentially doubling every year, like from our first hire to like 8 employees to like 15 the next year to, by 2021, we'd outgrown that space. And that's where we're in, 2.0 now, Tread 2.0, 33,000 square feet, AC, we got the, college size weight room, like all this stuff. But just knowing like kind of where it came from, it was not just like this straight linear path, because it was very much just like us just trying to bootstrap it from literally nothing. And so just a couple of fun photos and videos here of 2.0 and what this place looked like when we first moved in, and just kind of showing the work that went into getting this place where it needed to go. And then now obviously to dozens and dozens of employees, being able to track the amount of like talent and people from all corners of the globe. Like vast majority of our employees, 90+%, are not from this area. And so that's the cool part, is we're able to connect with people and they're able to connect with our vision and decide like, okay, this is what I want to do as a career now. I want to come be a part of this and move from every corner of the country to come help us and do what we're doing here in Charlotte. So I just want to end this video with like a thank you to a few groups. Like one, obviously, to our current athletes and our past athletes, especially the early adopters. So like, one of our first ever clients was Pitching Ninja and his son Jack, and they took a chance on us when we didn't have a reputation. We didn't have thousands of athletes that we coached. We didn't have like hundreds of testimonial videos published online. Like they just took a chance on us. Rob had followed along the stuff I've been writing for a few years, and Jack had been around the block a little bit, like training at kind of the recognizable names that were out there. And he was plateaued, and he was throwing 76 at 14, which is pretty good. And for him, it was the weight gain aspect. He went from 135 pounds to 205 pounds in about 2 years, and got up to 95 in high school. Just a great example. It's like nutrition for him was that limiting factor. It was that unlock, and we were able to kind of like, in his particular case, like tap the hammer in the right spot. And that for him was the unlock that allowed him to bust through that plateau. And then just, again, totally different thing for every player. But yeah, big thank you to the people that gave us a kind of a chance from the start. Much easier to take a chance on Tread now after the track record, but in that early phase especially, we don't take that lightly. And then obviously like current and past coaches and employees. I don't think people realize, like, or maybe they do, but this really is like one of the best and largest accumulations of like talented baseball minds in the world. And I'm learning constantly from our coaches, from our biomech team, from our data team. Like I'm picking their brains on things. It's definitely not like a top-down thing. Like there are stud coaches who I learn constantly from. I think it's important to realize like Tread is not just me at all. Like far from it, not even remotely close. Like there's so much credit to everyone in this building that actually makes things run and operate behind the scenes that maybe don't get seen on social media, but doesn't mean that they're not contributing to what we're doing, they're contributing to the vision. So just making sure it's clear, like it's not about me. I just happen to be featured in a lot of the content and serve in this role. Our job for these guys is to build a culture, environment, and the systems to like provide for a very rewarding job, a very rewarding career for these guys, and not just make it like a quick stepping stone or burn them out, or just like make it somewhere they can only tolerate for a year and then they want to go and take a pro ball job. Like that's very much not our goal, even though that's the norm in a lot of other places. Our goal is to find these talented people who believe in the vision that we do and want to be a part of it for the long term. And it's very much similar to the long-term approach we take to our athletes and their development. It's not a quick fix. It's not a stepping stone. It's like, you want to be a part of this, let's do it. And let's make this a mid to long-term relationship. And then finally, thank you to our followers. Thank you to you guys for watching our content, for engaging with the content. I would just encourage you, like if you've been lurking, following our stuff for years and never left a comment, never sent a DM, to do that. Like engage with us, let us know what you like, let us know what we could do better, because that is the only way that we really get feedback beyond like the basic engagement numbers. Like we see what the likes and the views, like we see some of that stuff, but we need to know specifically from you, like what do you want to see more of? What are you getting the most value out of? And that really does help steer the strategy and the information that we can provide you guys. So we do read those comments. Like we read every single comment. If you put my name in the comment, like our team will show it to me. I'll make sure to read it and respond to it. But somebody from our team will read every comment. And for us, it's just about continuing to put out information that would help the younger version of myself, which I believe is all the players that follow us are in that same boat. We're going to continue to be authentic in what we do. We're going to continue to try to listen to and incorporate your feedback in our future content. Avoid the excessive clickbait stuff. Obviously, you have to play to some extent. You need to play the YouTube game a little bit, or they won't even show your videos. But avoid that type of clickbait stuff or selling out. We're not pushing products. We're not pushing affiliate relationships on you guys, and we're just trying to keep it value first and athlete first. So thank you. Comments, good things, bad things, whatever you got for us. Let me know so that we can adjust what we're putting out for you guys accordingly. As far as where we're heading over the next 10 years, we're going to keep putting out the best content we can. We're going to keep trying to drive as many innovations as we can in the game. Just a couple of years ago with Leif and with the kick change, like that's just one example that we're very proud of. And continuing to not just do kind of internal research, but put out research and put out the findings that we're discovering in our motion capture lab with our data team. The amount of data that we're able to collect here, it's really second to none. And so as we learn from that data set, I'm excited to not just dive into it and perform a lot of these studies internally to kind of figure out the answers to some of these questions. But as we learn, we're going to share it with you guys and make sure that it kind of levels up the collective knowledge of the entire industry. But more than that, it's just like using it to help our athletes, to better direct our programming and give our athletes the best chance at success as possible. And that's really all I've got for you guys. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about the history of Tread, how my story kind of tied into it, where it started from. Obviously now you guys know what Tread stands for. And excited for another 10 years. I'm not going to spill the beans on what we have planned, but as epic as this past 10-year run has been, it's going to be even more epic. And just excited for you guys to be along for the ride, for our team to be along for the ride, and see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.